Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope that you enjoy today's stories and check out the chapters on the video to see all the stories for today. But before we get into this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notified when we release a new video. So let's get into the video.
People who have seen something they could never explain. What was the thing?
Experience 1. Shortly after my mother passed away, I was going through and organizing her belongings in her room. I was talking out loud as if I were talking to her. There were some boxes with family photo albums I'd been looking for that I hadn't been able to find, and it was really worrying me. I was sitting on the floor and said aloud, "Where did you leave those albums, Mom?" Very slowly, her closet door opened on its own. A slow, creaking movement from nearly totally closed to halfway open. I was as terrified as I'd ever been in my life. I froze and didn't move, but I looked at exactly eye level and there was a cardboard box labeled albums in my mother's handwriting on the lower shelf of the closet. I am not a religious or even spiritual person, and I thought that there might be some imbalance in the hanging of the closet door. I went back to the door many times and tested it by wiggling it back and forth and leaving it in different positions, but it's never moved that way since. Experience 2. In my early 20s, I was home alone. I woke up to my cell phone ringing but missed the call. The phone number I missed the call from was my home phone number. I got up and found the cordless phone on the kitchen counter. I looked everywhere, but no one was in the house and the doors were all locked. Experience 3. Was talking on the phone to my dad in the garden about 15 years ago. Saw an orange light slowly come up over some trees behind my house, then take off straight up at a ridiculous speed. Stood there in silence, and so did he. Explained to him what I'd just seen, and he said he'd just seen the exact same thing. He was over 100 miles away in Manchester at the time. Experience 4. I fly helicopters for a living. I was working on a power line one year and was going back to our landing zone and noticed an opening in the trees that appeared to be a leg. I came back and tried to get as low as I could into the clearing, thinking it was a person. It was a full-grown cow that had been completely skinned. There were no farms around and the animal didn't appear to be cut up in any way. I went back to the landing zone, picked up one of my ground crew members, and flew back with him just so he could verify that I wasn't crazy. On the flight back, we were both kind of in awe because we had no idea how that animal got to where it was. Even more, so that it had no skin on its entire body, it looked like a perfect cow sans skin. Experience 5. I was walking along a park sidewalk blowing off grass clippings. Got under some pine trees, and through a break in the canopy an 8-10-pound rock came tumbling out of the sky, bounced and chipped the sidewalk and rolled down into a creek. Weirdest thing I've ever seen. Experience 6. Not me, but my dad. When I was younger, my biological mom and her husband kidnapped me and took off to another state. My dad said that he was finally starting to accept that he may never see me again after nearly a year of searching, and then one day when he was on a walk, this little girl came up to him and asked,
"Are you looking for a little girl?"
He looked at her, confused, and she just turned around and pointed up the block at a group of kids playing, and said,
"She's right there."
He walked closer, past the girl, to try to get a better look and saw me in the group. He turned around to figure out what the little girl's deal was, and she was just gone, without a trace. Turns out my bio mom and her husband had come back to visit family for whatever reason. I used to call BS because the story is just so insane, but throughout the years, it's the one story of my dad's that never changed. Not one detail. He's told it so many times that I can recite it word for word, and he's always so freaking awestruck when he tells it, like I can almost see him racking his brain, searching for the most logical explanation. I was 2-3 when it happened, and I'm now 26. He still can't piece it all together to this day. Experience 7. I and my brother saw light coming through a bricked-off vent in my house about 20 years ago. It was a powerful light, like there was a mini sun in there. Light has never come through it before or since, and we both still remember it. Experience 8. A tree fell in front of us while we were driving. It almost killed us. Moments later, a group of men dressed in nice clothes just happened to have chainsaws in their car that was black and black tinted windows. They started cutting up the tree. We quickly turned around and said nope. I tried to tell myself that it was just Mormons who happened to have chainsaws in the back of their car. I called my mom the other day to see if she still remembers that incident, and she does. Experience 9. Actually, I still don't understand the concept of déjà vu. It happens to me about twice a year since I was around 18 years old. I'm 44. Just random places or experiences that I swear I have seen and been through before. It's so strange.
Do you like listening to these stories? Do you want to hear more of them? Then click that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. And check the description for links to more videos and interesting stories.
Experience 10. When I was 19 or 20 and first living on my own, I woke up in the middle of the night once to a pitch black room, but realized I could see as if everything in my room was subtly outlined in a reddish glow. I closed my eyes and could still see the exact same thing. I then covered my eyes with my hands, but could still see. I even got up and tested it by walking around my house with my eyes closed, and was able to navigate around all obstacles and even see things like cups on the counters and able to pick them up without missing them. After a little bit of this, I turned on the light to confirm everything was where it was, and when I turned the lights back off, the effect was gone. Overall, it lasted about 10 minutes and has never happened again. My best guess is that I was still half dreaming, and my brain was just able to very accurately represent my memory of where everything was. But even if that's the case, I'm very impressed with my brain's half-asleep ability to form a full 3D representation of my environment as I'm moving and manipulating small objects. Either that or I discovered a latent superpower. Experience 11. In college, my wife, girlfriend at the time, had a nightmare that her pet iguana, at home with her father, had frozen to death after being left outside. She woke up sobbing, and that woke me up. I calmed her down and told her it was just a dream. We both eventually got back to sleep. The next morning, her father called to say that her pet iguana had been left outside overnight and had frozen to death. This wasn't a recurring dream or worry for her. This was the only time it happened. Neither of us can explain the events without the aid of religion or 1 in a trillion coincidence. Experience 12. I, 13 at the time, was about to go to bed. I was brushing my teeth in front of my bedroom window, staring into the dark, when I suddenly heard someone screaming outside. I stopped brushing so I could hear it better. Someone was screaming out my name. I sort of froze and kept listening. More voices joined, all screaming my name and laughing loudly. It was kind of like an audience at a sports game. It went on for about 5 minutes. When it stopped, I, in shock, went downstairs to my parents to ask them if they'd heard anything. It was impossible not to hear as it was very loud. They had not heard anything. I assume it was some sort of a hallucination. Still feel weird when I'm alone in my room late at night. Experience 13. I was staying the night with a cousin on his ranch, and in his front yard there was a basketball hoop on a homemade wall like concrete bricks stacked upwards, and we both to this day swear on God we saw what looked like an 8-foot-tall coyote standing up against the wall tugging on the hoop. We closed the blinds quick, and that was the night we established the existence of the ranch's very own cryptid. I think we called it Doom Dog or some crap. We were 9 to 10. Experience 14. When I was 18 years old, I was driving home from a friend's house with another friend. We were on the highway doing about 110 kilometers per hour, 70 miles per hour, and made this trip often. It's a big highway between 2 towns, so just fields on either side. Something on 2 legs ran alongside my car. I saw it in the rearview mirror and out my side window. It was not a kangaroo, it was human-like. Had long arms and was obviously extremely fast. My friend saw it too, and then it just went off the road back into the grass. Neither of us could explain it. Experience 15. I think I was 14 at the time, living in a nice part of a very busy city. I woke up, had breakfast, and waited for my parents to come downstairs. They didn't come. I looked for them but couldn't find them, couldn't find my sisters either. I went outside and there was no one. Literally 0 people in an incredibly busy area on a weekend. I panicked fully. I looked everywhere for people, but they just weren't there. I fully freaked out, thinking everyone disappeared. I even checked if there was something on TV about it. There was live TV with people, so I calmed a bit. Other people still existed. I think it was around afternoon when I stopped looking around and walked home. When I got home, my parents and sister were luckily there. They insisted they were in and around the house all day, and I even saw them at breakfast. I broke down crying because it was simply not true. To this day, I swear people disappeared for half a day. After my breakdown, we went for ice cream and my city was busy again, hundreds of people doing their thing. I have no clue what the hell happened, but I feel gaslighted by life. Experience 16. In my old townhouse, the bedrooms had L-shaped door handles. I lived alone and it was a 2-story townhouse with the bedrooms upstairs. Had multiple nights where I'd be lying in bed watching YouTube videos on my iPad when my door handle would twist and the door would slowly open. The first time, I thought someone broke in. Each subsequent time, I'd go through the townhouse and no one was there. The hallway light, which was also the stair light, had a switch at the bottom of the stairs and top that controlled the same light. Multiple times while in bed, the light would turn on. So, I'd get up and do a search of the entire townhouse. Nothing there. Then the TV would turn on in the living room at some point, and I'd wake up and walk downstairs to the TV being on. This went on for months and I eventually moved. Nothing like this occurs in my current apartment, but could never explain what was happening. Experience 17. I was standing on the seaside walkway with a bunch of other people watching the sunset. A red orb came speeding down the coastline at 50 to 150 meters in altitude. I did not think much of it until it instantly stopped and speeded back the way it came until it was out of sight. No noise, too low for a plane or helicopter, and wasn't a flare because it was flying fast, stopped instantly, and then flew back the way it came. Several people saw it, but this was before mobile phones with cameras were a mainstream thing. Experience 18. I worked as an underbutler in a large Scottish castle in the early 2000s. One night, I was the only person in the house and decided to throw a load of laundry in before bed. I walked down to the service hallway, into the ironing room, and from there to the washing machine room. I got my laundry in and then started to leave. I turned the lights off in the washing machine room, and suddenly everything was black. The lights weren't on in the ironing room. My first thought was it's weird that I didn't turn the lights on in here when I came in, but they aren't on, so obviously I didn't. The ironing room had huge ironing tables the size of snooker tables, and as I started to walk through, I kept bumping into them. After a couple of times of bumping into them, I was suddenly filled with a terrible, accompanied, watched, spine-tingling feeling that something was there and not to look toward the sewing room, another room that came off the ironing room. I fumbled my way through the ironing room and back to the service hall in a panic. The hall lights were on, and everything was fine. That is the whole story. I didn't see anything. However, there are some problems. To this day, I am confident that I turned the lights on in the ironing room when I went in. It wasn't possible to move through the room without bumping into things a bunch of times, as my exit demonstrated. The light in the ironing room was controlled by a very large switch that made a loud clicking noise. I didn't hear it click off when I was in the washing room. In the days that followed, the family and the butler returned home, and I had forgotten about the entire incident. A week or so later, I suddenly remembered it happening and said to the butler,
"I've never heard of any ghost stories at the castle. Are there any?"
He kind of dismissively said,
Oh, they say there's a white lady in the ballroom, and room name redacted, is apparently haunted, but that's it. Oh, and they say the sewing room is haunted.
I kind of gasped and told the butler the story. He seemed fascinated. He told the family, and a couple of them agreed that the laundry room was unsettling. I don't believe in ghosts, and think it was likely an unfortunately timed electrical fault and an overactive imagination. Still, I'll never forget how sudden and strong the feeling of a presence was when I was fumbling my way out of the ironing room.
We hope you enjoyed listening to today's stories. If you want to see more stories, check out these videos or check the links in the description for more videos. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And ring that notification bell.